Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Ina Blau. I am the head of the Research Center for Innovation and Learning Technologies, and I'm delighted to introduce our special guest, Professor Lalo Salmerón from the University of Valencia. Professor Salmerón is a professor of psychology, experimental psychology. He spent some time in US as a Fulbright fellow, and today he's a leading researcher in the field of reading comprehension in digital environments. He's also elected president of the Spanish Society for Experimental Psychology and a member of the PISA Reading Expert Group of the OECD. This visit was possible thanks to the support provided by the Open University Research Authority, the University International Office, and the Ministry of Science and Culture. So thank you, Lalo, for being here. We are delighted, and the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning, everybody. So thanks to you for the invitation. It was, and it's been a real pleasure to be around during this week. I know these are not easy times, but when I received the invitation, I thought, okay, I have been already working with some colleagues in the past from Technion, and we have already the connection. I thought, okay, I should, why not? I mean, even in difficult times, this is the kind of working links you want to keep up pushing. So again, thanks, Jel, for the invite. And so I hope during the next 40 minutes, you will get some insights on what we have been doing in the last 3-4 years in Valencia, one of the largest projects we have been engaged with. I will provide you some feedback, some context, cultural context, in which, because we mostly work with Spanish high school students. And the whole idea, it's for the past, I have been quite engaged in digital reading research. At some point, I became really critical, as many of us, as I saw that the kind of developments technology had promised to us 20-25 years ago were not really taking place. So at some point, I was a little bit more like engaged in this paper, digital comparisons. But then at some point, we decided, okay, let's go back to the digital world, and let's try to do our best to take advantage of the possibilities the digital tools can offer for students' development of advanced reading comprehension skills. Yeah, so this is where all this comes from. Just a brief intro. We are I'm part of this Reading Institute of the University of Valencia. This is kind of unique in Spain. So we are the major research institution focusing on doing research on reading, from neuroscience to we have labs that do book promotion, to labs that focus on how to teach reading, labs oriented towards neurodiversity and reading, and ourselves as a digital reading group. So we do this work on reading and also transfer to society. So we work a lot with schools in order to promote reading on the different aspects, reading motivation, and so on. So within this context, I will bring you this short definition on reading comprehension, digital reading comprehension, I would say, by PISA, which we are updating at the moment, but more or less I can say that it keeps the same logic. So the whole idea of this definition is that we move away from a tradition vision in which, okay, reading comprehension basically means, okay, you know the words, you decode the words, and that's it. And then somehow understanding emerge from your ability to identify the meaning of single words. So the point is that there's something else, there's much more than that, and this is what it's trying to be captured in this definition. So I would like to emphasize that for PISA, reading comprehension is it's understanding, of course, but it's also using information. And even more critically, it's evaluating the information a student receives on text. And this is not an abstract kind of skill, but this is something we engage in reading comprehension to achieve our own goals and to participate in society, to learn. So we do things for some purpose. But the critical point here is this, that it's something far beyond that simply being able to recognize words and put them together. A little bit of the context. Spain, as compared to, one nice thing of PISA is that you can compare for the sake of trying to understand to what extent can you improve or you're already doing well with other countries. So in terms of reading, Spain nowadays, this is data for 15 years old. It's doing average, OECD average, so nothing really special. But then you also see from this graph, there's this negative trend that was maximized after COVID times. So in the last wave, 2018, as we are not unique in this, I think it's most of the world, we see this negative trend on readers, students' abilities to comprehend complex texts. A little bit more in detail. When you look at different levels, you know that PISA allows for comparing students at different levels. So average, it's basically nothing. It doesn't tell you. But when you look at levels, so you can get much more fine-grained understanding of what's going on. So this is data from level 1, the yellow, and level 1 and 2. And this is this basically means these are the percentage of students who can make sense of text as long as they are short, usually sentences or paragraphs. They can engage in some inferences, so making connections within the text, as long as they are quite explicit and they don't demand much knowledge. And that's it. So everything beyond that, so dealing with more complex texts, trying to make connections between the text and your knowledge, trying to actively criticize the text information or the author credentials, this is out of reach of this level 2. And as you can see, Spain is doing quite well. So in reading, this is in the middle. It's only you'll say, well, 24% of our students are within this range. Then the average OECD is 26. So yes, I will claim that when it comes to the lower part of the distribution, yes, Spain, it's doing a little bit better than average. The problem, I will claim, it's when you look at the upper, the blue bars represent percentage of students who are at level 5 or above. Level 5 or above, this is the level where students can handle, can comprehend text, longer texts, can comprehend relationships between multiple documents, even when they include difficult relationships such as opposition, like contradictory messages. They can also engage in this more complex inferencing, making global inferences, and being able to some extent, to judge the text by its form, by the quality of the message, and by the trustworthiness of the authors. This is great. So if you look at the average ACD, it's 7%. You could claim it's low, but still. But then my point is that in Spain, we're doing much worse than average. Yeah, so in a way I have the feeling that in the last 20 years this inclusion kind of programs we have implemented, it kind of work well to at least ensure that most students reach a decent level, but this may have come at the expense of not paying too much attention to the upper part. So the intervention I will show you today aims to some extent to try to fill this gap by supporting teachers in their efforts to teach students these more advanced reading comprehension skills. Just a final note, when we speak about digital reading comprehension, three major competences arise. That these are competences that have been always there, also with print, but that the digitalization has put much more emphasis on the need to master them. And those are navigation, integration, and evaluation. Navigation basically meaning being able to move across different web pages or within the same page using hyperlinks. Integration becomes a core because on the internet or with the digital media you have so much information you need to integrate this. We don't have this nice idea from the past that you get one document with all the information necessary. Now it's you need to integrate pictures, text, within text different opinions and so on. But then also critical to the internet and due to the open access philosophy, you can be confronted with really good quality text, but also the opposite, with made-up text, AI, fabricated, untrustworthy text. So then students' ability to critically judge the text they need to comprehend, it becomes even more important nowadays than in the past. And I will say this was true 10 years ago, and it's becoming more and more critical. Things like navigation, we could say, okay, now text, ChatGPT, you don't even need to navigate, to just prompt. But evaluation now becomes even more critical. And this is something, by the way, which is being captured in the new PISA framework. So you will see, I will talk about these three, mostly evaluation and integration. So a couple of ideas about what do we know when researchers have tried to improve adolescents' digital reading comprehension. What you can see is that most attempts have focused on individual competences, like either trying to address integration, try to improve evaluation, but this, to a lesser extent, we have comprehensive approaches. And for us, this is critical to the extent that we want our system to be sustainable, so that teachers will continue using it after the study. So we are not happy just simply proving that you can statistically improve whatever sourcing skills or students' ability to identify and judge the source by its trustworthiness. But we want also that teachers will say, okay, this is something important that we can use on a daily basis. So having a comprehensive view will, or understanding is that it will support such sustainability. Also, you can see that many of the interventions around tend to be quite short, 3-4 sessions. This is totally understandable, and schools are already overwhelmed, and for pragmatic reasons, I fully understand this. But when it comes to building complex reading strategies, this may feel too short. So we aim, as you will see, to try to have a semester-long intervention. And then a final critical aspect in our reading of previous literature is that we have seen limited adaptability to students' performance or level. And so that most interventions look like a standard package. And my point here will be that if technology has something positive to add, which you cannot find in the paper analogical world, is adaptability. so that the system could easily react to the student's needs on the fly and modify whatever, content message, assessment, feedback, at the point in which a student needs it. And this is, the technology can do that. Of course, a tutor could also do that if we had an individual tutor, but that's not realistic. So I will try to emphasize this, the need to go into this direction, as this is one of the positive things that technology can offer us. Just one example, I picked this from Sarit Barzilai from Haifa, so it's closer to your context. And they use in this short intervention, 3-4 sessions, they wanted to teach adolescents, Israeli adolescents, on sourcing, so that the ability to judge the trustworthiness and integration across different multiple documents. And they did so in 4th grade classes using promptings like this, like while the students were reading the texts, and they will explicitly be asked to, okay, now judge the credibility of the source. Yeah. And also another strategy they use, it's on top of this scaffolding was, and now there's also this kind of visual map in which the students have to identify the main message from each document, and they have to tag the relationship between each document. It was an opposition, it was pros and cons, so on. So in a way, by doing this, they wanted to spur students' integrative intertext relationships. This was great. They found nice positive effects on a post-test measure for essay, integrative essays, and some indicators of sourcing, such as number of citations in the essays. But what I like most from this intervention, or this, well, in the conclusions, they say something like this. Through qualitative analysis of students' discourse, because to some extent students have to practice in pairs, we identified 4 themes, and one of them was that this visual scaffolding they have used, the visual maps, kind of support the students' monitoring and evaluation through visual feedback, so that they could easily see that, hey, you did this map, I identified this other relationship. Yeah. So in a way, informally, I mean, this was not intended, they saw that students were using the tool in ways that they could get feedback on their performance. Yeah. And we know that from past literature on learning sciences that feedback is one of the top 10 positive influences on learning by Hattie, and this has been demonstrated in many fields, mathematics, not just reading. But in the context of reading comprehension, we also have some recent meta-analysis that shows that simply giving feedback, so some message after students' responses to reading comprehension questions have a positive influence, kind of medium-sized influence on comprehension. So to the point that technology can do this almost for free, so it's really not really fancy, you don't even need AI for that. So this seems like kind of a powerful way to go, is use these feedback messages. Interestingly, when you dig deeper, and this is a nice thing about meta-analysis, that you can check not just the overall picture, but to see exactly which are the moderators or the conditions in which the effect is higher. Then what they see, Spad and colleagues, is that it's mostly what they call elaborative feedback, which works best. Elaborative feedback by opposition to corrective feedback. Corrective feedback is simply having a grade and say, okay, this is correct or not. Okay, it's some kind of feedback. Yes, it's an indication of your performance, but you don't go beyond. What in reading comprehension works better, it's elaborative feedback. There's a few of them. So you could, for example, in instruction or task-specific information, you could go beyond and say, okay, this is not correct. The correct response is this. Okay, this is something else. Or what they call instruction-based feedback. It's now I try to explain to you why this is not correct. Okay, this is still better than simply saying yes or no. But what we were mostly interested is on this third type of elaborative feedback, which is what they call extra instructional information. So that when you go beyond the literal content, like, for example, when you try to make explicit to the student the kind of process she needs to engage in to properly comprehend a text. Yeah. So, for example, and this is the feedback, you will see different examples around, for example, when they are tasked to comprehension questions that requires that they judge the trustworthiness of the author, then the feedback can tell, okay, this is not correct. In trying to answer this, please judge if the author is knowledgeable about the topic. Yeah, so you kind of guide the kind of mental process that experts will engage in. So when it comes to the cognitive mechanism, why this elaborative feedback supports comprehension, there's basically two mechanisms. One, it's this issue of feedback can act as a monitoring cue. So you can identify if your ongoing comprehension it's been efficient or not. And because comprehension, particularly in longer text, is something that it's accumulated. So if you fail to understand some key idea at the beginning, this may have negative consequences later on. Being able to spot quickly that you have not understood properly something and having the opportunity to reflect on that will help you, to build a subsequent coherent representation. So this is one thing, but the monitoring cue hypothesis assumes that then you know what to do. So it's not only somebody pointing to you that, hey, this is not correct, but some students may simply don't know what they have to integrate information. They have to make inferences between two pieces of text. And this is where the second potential mechanisms makes sense. It is elaborative feedback could serve as a scaffold in which the students it's guided on how and sometimes when you may know how to do inferences, but you may not realize that at this to solve this particular question, you may need to integrate information. So both how and when. So we will take those ideas into our intervention, as you will see. Well, okay, so I may need to go a little bit quicker, just to, I don't think I need to convince you that computer-assisted instruction could benefit from this kind. And actually, if you compare feedback provided in computers versus not in the context of reading comprehension, you see that computers can be much helpful in part because it allows this adaptability I mentioned before. So within the context of intervention, digital interventions, it's not just the feedback that needs to be provided, but in a way you need to allow users or students to practice the feedback. And this is where this dynamic assessment or dynamic interventions philosophy comes in. Basically, this is based on the zone of proximal development by Vygotsky. The whole idea is that students, okay, to some extent, they may be able to solve the task, but without some support, they may fail. So having this feedback as an opportunity to do your response could be tapping this zone where students still can learn. So this is how it looked like. Students in our system will be provided with questions while they are reading. If they respond correctly, they will proceed to the next question. They will continue reading in the lower branch. If it's incorrect response, then the system will let them respond again. But before it will give, in the experimental condition, some elaborated feedback, the control condition, just corrective, and they will have a second attempt. So this way we ensure that students are using feedback messages, or at least we stimulate that they use the feedback messages, yes? As opposed that in a traditional situation in which, yeah, you're given the feedback and then maybe next semester, or no, sorry, next week, you can apply that to the next assignment, yeah? So here you can apply that on the fly. So this is kind of summarizing what we aim to do. We want to build this adaptive system that will be going on for 4 months, 16 weeks. And we were particularly interested in the 2 cycles in the Spanish high school degree, which is 7th, 8th grade. This, in Spain, this means you just came in from primary school. So you are used to have one teacher. Now you are moved to a more older kind of a style, or 9th, 10th grade, which is like the last 2 years of compulsory education that can pave the way for higher education or not. So we have some expectations. I will not call them hypotheses, because some of the things we learn with this large-scale intervention is that you have so much noise around to be, But we expected that this kind of feedback, elaborative feedback, will be particularly beneficial for those who need it most, so less advantaged students in terms of skills, or the younger sample, as opposed to those from 9th, 10th grade. We also look at, and we expected that at the level of the comprehension process being tapped, it will mostly support more advanced comprehension processes, those who you may expect that the students don't engage in a regular manner, like sourcing, like being critical on the author. And we also expected that those aspects will interact, but I will be more specific in a second. So this is an overview of the procedure. So we collaborated with this edtech company in Madrid, which provided access to 14 high schools all across Spain, from the north to the south, with the islands. So it's 40 complete classrooms. A little bit more from 7th, 8th grade than 9th, 10th grade. In the end, we had complete data from 700. And the design, it's a classical pre-post test. We have a standardized reading comprehension test I will show you in a second. But that felt too kind of away from our intervention. So we also included this source knowledge inventory, which taps specifically sourcing, the ability to judge sources online, also in pre-post test. The interventions were, as I already mentioned, 16 weeks, every week, 1 reading unit, and the reading unit contained 16 questions. And the students were, yes?
Clarification, the reading was on paper, print, or digital paper?
It was on screen. Yes, they work in schools, in computer labs. Some of them with tablets, but this was a minority. Yeah. No, mostly computer lab. Yes. And this was post-pandemic, so we did it in school, not from home. Exceptionally, some student may have failed 1 week, and then for this kid, we allow him, her to redo the assignment at home, but this was just the exception. We also have one waiting list control group that basically did the intervention, but in the second semester. This is how the reading comprehension, standardized reading comprehension text looks like. It resembles PISA 2005, I will say. It's 5 expository texts with some variety of more literal, inferential, and evaluation questions. Fortunately, we don't have many standardized reading comprehension texts in Spanish, so this is why we opted that. This was developed in our lab almost 2 decades ago. The source knowledge inventory, which was our second, this is not standardized, but this is an ad hoc test that basically measures students' ability to, in the context like this, where they receive Google scenarios with links with more or less trustworthy sources. They have to answer questions such as, okay, from which of these, without even clicking, which of these 4 links do you think it will be best be used to solve your query? In this case, it's about some concerns about TikTok. Something related to advertisement and privacy. Yeah. So all the questions were about, to what extent the sources know or not about. So you got the point. So this is something similar in some PISA items. Going a little bit more specific about the intervention, the elaborative feedback messages were aligned to the type of question being answered. So for every unit, the students could have location questions, bridging inferences with prior knowledge, assessing the intention of the author, assessing the credibility of the author, integrating text and pictures. So there was like 16 types of comprehension questions, and feedback was tailored to that. These are examples. So for location question, when they fail, they will see something like the information you need appears clearly in the text or can be easily inferred. For inferences, they will get, it is important to combine the information in the text with your own knowledge. For source evaluation, something like this, remember that the most reliable sources are those with qualified and impartial authors, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I can come back if needed, but this is the whole list of feedback. And then for units, this was going back to our emphasis on building a sustainable program. We wanted to have students exposed to different genres. This is okay. We don't have to run. Okay, are you sure? Should I keep? Okay. So, as I said, we use different types of narrative, historical text, expository, scientific text, with different types, single text, text with graphs, multiple text, like different web pages. Just to give you an example, this plastic-eating caterpillar, this first text was about plastic-eating caterpillar that will save the environment. So this was scientific text that introduced this caterpillar with some graph. And then the second, wow. Example I brought to you is entitled, Does it make sense to have children later in life? And this is a mixed unit in which students see some Twitter messages, commenting on a newspaper report, on an interview of a biologist complaining about Spanish women being really postponing their pregnancy. So they had different perspectives on these, more qualitative researchers, some random Twitter users on it. Yeah, and these are the whole, I won't go through those, the 16 units. Okay, so this is a screenshot of how the interface looked like. So students will answer the question. In this case, it's incorrect, so they're told incorrect. Try again, and then this is the feedback that you should pay attention on how the text from the text, the words from the text link to each other to understand how the structure of the text. Yeah, so let me now move, and then students will continue through this, through the whole unit, reading, and then together with so this will be a different pages, and then from time to time they will get questions. Yeah, usually aligned more or less to the content they were reading. So I will show you two types of results: pre-post test analysis, which you will claim they are more kind of the standard, but I can anticipate. Don't expect nothing fancy. I can come back to that later on. And then I will go through process analysis, in which basically we took the information of students' progress through the whole units. Yeah. So when it comes to this pre-post, reading a standardized progression, the first thing, it's quite easy to explain. Basically, we did not find any difference as compared to the control group. Control group who basically continued the class as usual. Yeah, that you may see some tendencies, but in the end, it's basically what you will expect. Those students on this horizontal axis, those students who were better at pre-test, they still better at post-test. Yes, and no matter which of the three groups they were in. I will come back to that in the discussion, but I'm afraid that this is something common. So it's not so easy to find effects on the standardized tests when they are, like in this case, not extremely well aligned. A little bit more positive, the effects for the source knowledge inventory. So this short text on students' ability to criticize online sources. For the younger sample, you have on top 7th, 8th grade, there's basically only associations with pre-skills. So those better readers, better comprehenders, and those who had a higher knowledge on sourcing, they were better in the end, yes. No effects of feedback as compared to the control group. But for the older grades, 9th to 10th, so this will be 15, 16 years old, we still find effects. These are linear mixed models. We find effects on pre-test scores, but also positive effect of feedback. So both feedbacks work well in supporting students' progress on the ability to identify sources, but only for the older sample. Yeah, I will come back to that in the discussion as well. So now let me go a little bit in detail on the process analysis. We did a couple of studies so within this large project. This one was led by Amelia Magna, a colleague from the lab, and she was mostly interested on see the effects of feedback through the whole 16 units. So in a way, by looking at whether some students correctly responded to comprehension questions within the unit, you could have a closer idea of what was going on instead of just simply relying on this post-test. And then a second thing she was interested on was to look at whether some students use the feedback, because this is something critical. You can provide a feedback message, but in the end, it's going to be the student who decides, okay, I really engage in the feedback message, and then I try to use it to further understand the text. So she looked at how this reading time, from the time that they got the feedback to when they responded for the second attempt, had something to do with comprehension on that particular unit. So what she found was something surprising, I would say. So the left part, it's 7th, 8th graders. And then you see on top of the pre-test effects that you may expect. For younger kids, adolescents, the feedback conditions work in the expected way. So elaborated feedback through the 16 sessions improve was associated with better performance, comprehension performance, but, and this was rather unexpected, we found basically the opposite for the older kids, older adolescents. Basically meaning that for 9th and 10th graders, simply telling them, okay, this is correct or not, on average, it worked better. I don't know if this is a surprising thing for you, but it was for us. I will come back to that. So this goes in the line of, okay, how students are receiving and perceiving feedback. When it comes to the reviewing time, we conducted this linear mixed model moderated mediation analysis. Linear model mediation analysis. And basically what we found some modest indirect effects that you could, let me guide you. This reviewing time worked as we expected. So the more time students spend reviewing, they will have higher text comprehension scores. This is great. So potentially the effect of feedback is there as long as the students dedicate time to process and then going back to the text. This is for 7th, 8th grade, but the same for 9th to 10th grade, positive effects, yeah? But the trick point is this A path. So what this means, this is positive and this is negative, so this means that for younger kids, 7th to 8th grade, being in the elaborative feedback, push them to spend longer times using the feedback. Yeah, but the opposite was true for the older adolescents, sorry, 9th to 10th. Yeah, in this case, having elaborated feedback messages make them to spend less time reviewing their responses. And so as a consequence, there was also this little indirect effect on it. Yeah.
Nothing to do with the content itself. There is content that require more immediate feedback. I think of learning to swim, more immediate. And there is content that require more elaborate feedback. And I wonder if some of your results are influenced by the type of content.
Yes. Yes, you're right. I totally agree. And this is something we try to do next to the extent that we can hear this data. It's basically all average, these 16 questions that you had questions really basic, like what's the name of the author? Like, yeah, it's over there. To much more complicated, like what was the intention of the author when he used this particular verb? Yeah. So yes, I totally agree that we need to go into this more fine-grained analysis. Fortunately, this is what I started doing now. This is the work by Oscar Escobar. He's a PhD student. I co-supervise. He's from University of Oslo. And he had this very same nice logic that say, okay, but here we are measuring many of these processes. Let's just focus on his interest is mostly on struggling readers. So he decided, okay, from these 16 different types of questions, I will only focus on those providing feedback on literal or inference processes. Yeah. And most interestingly, he wanted to see the potential interaction with reading skills because we have this pre-screening test. Then he was expecting an interaction in this way. What we know from the literature of struggling readers is that those students in level 2 that I pointed a few minutes ago, they usually have difficulties in locating explicitly stated information in the text whenever they have to make connections or bridging inferences. But also, they struggle to incorporate text information within their own knowledge, so establishing more knowledge-based inferences. So to the extent that we could, with feedback, we could tell them, okay, now it's when you should engage, and this is how you should read. He expected that the benefit of elaborative feedback might be particularly improved for struggling readers. And this is how the data look like. Again, linear mixed models, feedback condition. The two models are for literal information or inferential, but they look the same. Feedback condition has a positive effect, main effect, going in the expected direction. So elaborative feedback will be, it's beneficial. Of course, pretest reading score. So if you are better, pretest you will do better. But more importantly, he found a significant interaction in both ways. And this reads this way. I can, on the left, you have literal comprehension scores, so kind of more easier. And on the right, inferential scores, so a little bit more complicated. And you see the pattern looks quite similar. I can guide you through this. So the red bars are those students with a score below 1 standard deviation on the pre-test score. So this was the cutoff for being identified as struggling. And as you can see, when they were using the corrective feedback, the scores, these are centered scores, they were much lower than when they received the elaborative feedback. And this is a little bit like a half standard deviation, so kind of a strong effect. This is for the literal. But if you go for the inferential, the more complex the tasks, you see the effect reaches is almost, not exactly, but almost 1 standard deviation. So from not only receiving corrective feedback to receiving this elaborative feedback. So the effect was quite large. And you can also see the green or blue, whatever color is this, it's also beneficial for more advanced students, or 1 standard deviation above the mean in the pretest, but much, progression was much smaller. Still, you could see some progress, particularly in more challenging ones. So, I'm not sure I'm okay. I need 5 more minutes. So to sum up, when looking at the pre-post-test effects, we found no progress on general reading comprehension compared to a control group that still were working on reading interventions as business as usual in their class. And as it turned out, this is something quite common in the literature. So when you look at this type of population, these kind of interventions, having effects on a standardized test of general reading ability, it's quite a challenge. So we are not alone on this. So maybe it was a fault to be too ambitious. So still, I want to share this so that if you want to plan something, you should double check in advance. To what extent do you have a standardized tests that clearly align to your intervention? Otherwise, it might be a little bit tricky. But in any case, we found progress for much more specific, complex processes such as sourcing skills. And in this case, the effect was only evident for the older grades. And the way we interpret this is that, okay, for this particular sample of older kids, sourcing messages was adding something of value to them. Sourcing, it's not something that you get taught in high schools in Spain. Whereas by the opposite, those messages related to, okay, the information is explicit on the text, this may be too obvious for them. So this leads me to the second point on what happened during the intervention. We see nice effects of elaborative feedback, that it worked like a scaffolding, particularly for young students, particularly for struggling students. And all these provided, this is conditional in a way to the fact that the students really engage with feedback and with revision. So something we definitely need to look in the future is, okay, how can we convince students that feedback is useful? We might need just simply to train them to say, hey, feedback is not about having a grade, but it's about having information that may support your learning. Yeah, and some students may not be aware of that. So we have to work on that direction. And of course, don't want to skip this, but we also found negative effects of elaborative feedback. So the message is much more complicated, particularly for older adolescents. So our conclusion here is that we definitely need to focus on this elaborative feedback should be clearly aligned to students' needs. And to the extent that elaborative feedback could be perceived as rather naive or too easy, it may have counterproductive consequences, that the students may just simply disregard that as, okay, this system is really stupid. I know that, but I failed because of other reasons. Yeah. But again, this is not, we are not alone. There's some evidence showing that feedback, if it's not really well aligned to specific needs of students, it can be counterproductive. Yeah. And this is something adults, teachers already know, but with computers, they need to be much more smart than the way we use them. So I will finish with this, the alternative we are working at the moment in a new 4-year study, which is a follow-up. We are moving to scenario-based assessments. And basically, I will guide you through that just one more minute. We want to also work, so for us, this idea of making instructional materials sustainable, it's quite relevant. So to ensure that, we are now, at the moment, building a new intervention, co-creating materials with teachers. And this is curricular material in which we are embedding the instruction of advanced reading comprehension skills. So this way, teachers won't perceive this as something, as an add-on that will be added to the already burdened schedule, but it will be something, no, this is to learn about, and we have language, biology, and history, and in each of these three, they will work on these competences I briefly mentioned, of integration, evaluation, and so on. So the interesting thing of scenario-based assessments, as I will show you in a second, is that they allow to much more adaptivity than simply messages, or feedback messages. So you can provide some scaffolding on the tasks, you can add task complexity, and you can adjust to a student's level, student's interests, and student progress to make it a little bit more advanced. Scenario-based assessment works like this. It's basically, it's not simply a reading task, but the students are given some sort of a scenario that kind of serves as an umbrella for the whole reading task. And so the whole system guides the students towards this ultimate goal. Like here they have to write some, I don't remember exactly, but it's about writing a letter to some students who went away to another country. Yeah. So the whole system will be, okay, now you have to write a letter, but before, we're going to see some examples, how people do that, and so on. So you could scaffold being more explicit or less explicit, depending on the student's abilities. Like in this case, it will be a little bit more explicit scaffolding, like, okay, this is the text, write 1 2 sentences, and then you have this example, and so on. Okay. So that was it. This is something, by the way, we are doing with a colleague from Memphis, John Sabatini. They have been working on that, and with colleagues from the Polytechnic University. So we are using some more fancy AI techniques. So now we can use open responses and a little bit more smart system that will react to students, not only to responses from one particular question, but to the progress through the whole intervention. So in a way, like a teacher will do, that you keep track of what the student has done. But maybe this is something we can discuss for the future, in my next visit. And now I'm done. Thank you. Okay, I will do that. Yes. So the question is about the time of the post-test measurement that we did 1 week after the last session was introduced. And then the question is, okay, what potentially we could do delayed post-test, like in some months, to ensure that we see like the long-term effects. And yes, I will go for that. I think it's important to stick, to have the most powerful test against your intervention, and this will be a kind of a strong test. But this is in theory. So in practice, what we had is this, I didn't go into details, but during the 16 weeks, we have to keep track of the 900 students, and every Friday we will contact teachers to ensure that they will follow in. If there was something going on, we will have to, like, hey, yeah, we have, but now we have a visit to a museum, so we could not do that. Okay, but so my point is that you get so many difficulties through the path that, and in the end, many schools were exhausted. That some of them even we have to drop one because the post-test they were like really, hey, yeah, come on, we won't do this. We already have taught our students. So my point is that it's a challenge. It's a practical challenge to get to that point. So originally we had planned this kind of assessment, but then when February came, this is the end of first semester, we said, okay, we are not going to do that because of missing data. But yeah, that for me, it's an important aspect that we have strong methodologies, and we know that we should apply, but there's also pragmatics and finding a compromise. It's not easy. So when it comes to what I will have expected, I'm not sure. So I already think it's, in a way, it's a little bit of, it's a postponed, because from the first intervention, which started in late September, so the first unit, to the post-test, it was in February. Okay, it's already some time. So it's not the classical intervention I do in 50 minutes, and then immediately I do. So in a way, we capture this. So, but still, yes, I agree. That would have been important.
I would like to come back to something I asked during your lecture about the content. Can you elaborate a little more about there are different contents that require different types of feedback. The learning requires different types of feedback. And I didn't see if you made the difference between life science and art or whatever.
No.
No. I believe,
yeah.
What I know, that this is a very crucial issue, and this may get you to completely different results if you look at math as opposed to history and whatever.
Yeah, so, okay, going back to the distinction of elaborative feedback messages, you have this tradition that sticks to the question, which is the elaborative feedback that tells you, okay, this is not correct, and then I explain to you why. this is content specific. But the way we did it's to try to, because in the end we won't be teaching content, we will be teaching cognitive processes or to some extent strategies to process text, then we could not make this alignment to the specific content, but to the underlying process that an expert advanced reader will engage in whenever they are confronted with this kind of task. So, although I see your point that content, yes, if you go through more content-specific elaborative feedback, will look really different. In our case, we wanted to have feedback which is general enough so that you could get a sense of the kind of processing or the kind of reading I should engage in for different scenarios. So I think again, it's in the middle. It's not this is how the feedback messages look like. So it's not always the same. So we have 16 types of feedback, but tailored to the question demands, not to the content. Yeah.
All the different processes that are required in learning, like is it procedural as opposed to inferential learning or kind of, and then the feedback would be, the effective feedback will be different in these cases. So
yeah. Yes. But yes, I totally agree. And to some extent, we did this pairing. And you can see that, for example, in sourcing this kind of feedback, remember that most reliable sources are those with qualified blah, 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 or author's intention. Regardless of what the teacher conveys, try to think about what the author intended to communicate by writing it. So these are what I will claim more advanced, more complex processes that many students don't even think about. And when we look at data, especially of these two, we were able to show that yes, elaborative feedback even for advanced students kind of work. But I see the point that for more easier ones, like something about vocabulary or paraphrasing and so on, yes, we may not reach in the needs. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very thought-provoking about things we see every day. I wanted to ask about the school context, the differences between, I'm no expert, but we very something to reading skills and literacy environment, students' experience at home. Has some connection to socioeconomic backgrounds, so if you see any differences or maybe different context of schools may require different kind of feedback or evaluation. That's the difference between the levels. Could you explain some differences? Again, if you can briefly repeat the question.
Okay, yes, briefly, but you keep asking difficult questions. So, the question is about the context. It could be socioeconomic or climate or whatever context from the schools, and to what extent feedback should be also adjusted to the climate. Again, that's I can only have some educated guess. So I will start for the easiest. The context of the intervention was most schools were middle to high socioeconomic status. And this was, again, not intended, but this was a reality we had to face. Many so schools coming from low socioeconomic status were interested in participating, but they could not do that ultimately, either because they lack technological resources, or even worse, there was some bureaucracy attached to that, which I found really annoying, because this is public money, and I want to ensure that those who really need it, not those who are ready. But so this was the context we start with. But then I can easily see your point that if you come from so the context of the school, it's a context in which students are heard, and so that feedback becomes part of the daily discourse. They may be they're much more receptive because they are used to get guidance and to use it for the purpose of learning. Whereas some schools that may have some more traditional approach in which they only get grades or points and that's it, they may find, yes, that was my point before, they may need some kind of training to say, hey, this is other life here. It's not only points, you could also get hints to improve. And this then should be a prerequisite of... but I wonder if, I like you from your question that maybe the messages could be adapted in this way. Like, hey, you know, this is me, I'm here to help. This is something you could benefit from. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Grades, and that could create an effect that students internalize these kind of norms, and they don't really care about the process, they just want to see
Yes.
the ratings. That's one of the reasons that
Yeah. Yes, just to repeat, if I got it right in Israel, your point is that there's much more emphasis on summative assessment, not much on formative, and then the students particularly, I can agree that the older ones, in our case, that go to bachelor's, so they are really obsessed because their grade will let them go into medicine or this, all this kind of feedback that it's about, hey, you know, try to do better, they won't care, and they will only value if it's correct or not. Yes, I have the feeling we have the same situation in Spain. So this is something, we definitely need to control for in next studies. Thank you.
I believe my question is not a difficult one. I noticed you've been using the terms skill and strategy interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
My American colleagues make a distinction between the two. A strategy is a deliberate action, and with more practice, it may become automatic and a skill.
Yeah. Yes, I may have used interchangeably, but I agree. So when I usually tend to use skills when I speak about pre-test scores, and so this is something that the students we assume the students already know how to do that. But then our focus is on trying to, by means of applying some strategies, to aim to incorporate those as a habit or automatize so that they become skills. Yeah, that's important. Thank you.
Thank you for the talk. I wonder if a more general feedback would be more effective. So for example, if the machine can skim over the entire questionnaire, like all the answers, and then give you a feedback like you're not paying enough attention to the text, or pay more attention, or something like that, will it be easier to generalize to the next text? I mean, I believe that, like, I don't know if this program can do it, but if you think about AI or stuff like that, you can give you like your profile as a reader, and then you could maybe implement better in the next text. Because I believe people have like troubles understanding the text because their vocabulary is too low, because they're not paying enough attention, because stuff like that.
Many things. Yeah. Great. So if I can.
I want to add to that.
Okay.
That some of the sentences here, to answer this question, it is important to keep grammatical knowledge in mind. But what if I don't understand this? I don't know which grammatical knowledge. I don't have grammatical knowledge, or it's not explicit. So how can I learn anything from this? If I knew how to do it, I would do it.
Yeah. So, okay, I try to mix both. Yes, so you are totally right. These messages were not, in some cases, were not totally transparent. And this, but you pick the example which is clearly not useful. Teachers were also encouraged to use, because teachers, they will have like a progression of students' skills. So for them, it was important to see, okay, these students, my group, it's improving in this or not. So this is a way where you may need teachers to say, hey, yeah, come on, we all need, let's try to recap on this grammatical knowledge. And so we left that open to teachers to do, so the system kind of encouraged this, but we did not have a way to control. But yeah, I totally agree that feedback messages have some limitation. In some processes, it's much more obvious than others. So you need to keep the human in the loop, as we say now. And then the original question was about, to what extent a more general feedback could be more useful. And this is something really interesting. It's in a totally different project. It's a European project with colleagues from Turku, Germany, and the Netherlands. We are building this AI system based on students' eye movements while reading. And the whole idea is that this AI model will be able to detect, for example, slow readers, inattentive readers. Then it will, we don't plan to use this for the student, but for teachers. So that teachers will have, not feedback messages, now we're thinking about some kind of graphic representation of the students, like say, hey, you have to work on this idea. Kids have been really skipping many parts of the text. Or the students are not integrating text with pictures. They're just going through them as if they were totally independent. And so that we expect that the feedback itself will be provided by, feedback and instruction will be provided by teachers, but with the support of this AI system. So yes, I totally see that there's also potential for a broader way of using students, in this case, interactions with the system. Because I totally agree that messages, in the end, they have this limitation that, yes, first they have to be understood. And some students, particularly struggling students, they may simply not get into that. And then they need to be adjusted. So that's a complex thing. So I see the point. And I hope we could also work on this in this all the different project. But thanks.
More questions? The last one?
Okay, thank you.